the more I edit, the more I realized absolutely anything can work if it's worked well. And there's like no trope that I think just doesn't work. It can usually there's a reason, and if an author is skilled enough, they can make it work. The reason a trope becomes a trope is because it works. You know, it wouldn't be a trope if it wasn't something that worked. It wouldn't exist. So it's not a matter of whether they're good or they're bad. It's a matter of this is a tool, and it depends on how the author uses it.
Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and I'm here today with author Sarah Chorn. Sarah, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
I know we've been trying to meet up for a little bit. You've been busy, so
Yeah, yeah. I always live my life on the run.
yeah. So you're a lot to talk. I want to pick your brain because you're an author, an editor, a blogger, reviewer. So I guess the first question is, what don't you do?
Well, I don't do cover art or math. Those are my two main ones.
Wow, so you're almost a one stop shop.
Yeah, I try to be. No, I don't know.
And you're also an award nominated author, two-time award nominated author for the SPFBO semifinalist. So what is that like to be nominated in like that? Just to be nominated?
I was a semifinalist twice for that one, and it was intense. You know, I'm not surprised I didn't make it to the finals because I think I write weird stuff. But but it was intense. It was a good experience. I think it was um, the ones where I actually get nominated, like Reddit does some fantasy awards, like Stabby Awards. I got nominated last year for one, and I think it just floored me that anybody knew me enough to even nominate me for an award. Um, that was different because it was like people I don't know were putting my name forward, whereas the other one I kind of like forced my book upon people. So it was just it was a different approach. I'm more surprised when people like nominate my name for a list on some vast internet thing, I guess. They're both amazing, but they're just different.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I'm pressuring people with the SPFBO. You have to look at my book and you must like it. And I don't, that makes me uncomfortable. So,
Well, a lot of people push their books on that during that time. So to make it to semifinalists, that's a big accomplishment.
yeah, I was honestly really amazed.
Yeah. So what is that like? So when they tell you when they tell you that you're moving up in the competition, is that waiting game hard to wait and hear back on how the results go?
I don't pay attention, honestly. I didn't even know I made semifinal either time until like a week after it happened. So the way I deal with stuff like that is I just don't pay attention. I entered my books and then I said, what is that? I don't know what it is. I don't know what I did. Nothing happened. And I just totally turn it off. So whenever someone tells me, "Hey, this thing happened, maybe you should look at it because it's kind of cool," it's usually a few days after it's happened that I actually clue into it. I just don't pay attention, but that's what keeps me sane. I know a lot of authors find their own sanity in paying attention to every detail of everything, and for me, that's how you turn me into an alcoholic. I just can't. So I do things and then I just walk away.
I guess it helps that you have so much to keep yourself busy with. I guess it's easier
Yeah,
to kind of forget about things.
yeah, it is.
So how would you describe your writing style?
Oh, um, I write very lyrically. I know that. Very lyrically, and I focus a lot on deep emotions. I think the internal journey a lot of the time is more interesting than the external one. And so I know my books are very emotion focused and they're very lyrical because I have this, and you'll see it in my reviews a lot. If a book marries beauty and pain, just really well, like Grimdark stories, but they're told just gorgeously, that presses all my buttons. And so that's what I try to do with my books. I like to make people hurt, and I like to make them hurt emotionally because it's funner when they're doing it to themselves. And I like to tell the story beautifully. So if I can tear your heart out and I can do it prettily, then that's what I want to do.
How has how has your writing style changed since you started editing and you do reviews? What have you changed about your own writing style? How has that changed your approach?
Oh man, I learn something from every book I edit. Every author approaches a story differently. So I'm very lucky in the fact that I have all of these teachers constantly flowing through me. And every single one of them has strengths and weaknesses that are unique to anyone else. So I try to take everything I learn from my authors and bring it forward into my books. Recently, I've been really focused on, I've been learning a language. And so I've been really focused on like word pattern and extra words and things that don't need to be there. So that seems to be a result of me learning a language, but it's definitely flowing into both of my editing and my writing. I know I do approach stories very differently because I write more on an emotional landscape, but even then, there's a lot of how a plot works that I catch from all the authors I work with. From reviewing books has taught me a lot too, because the more you read, the better you tend to write. You have to input the information somehow. It doesn't just happen by osmosis. So I think we all do that though. We carry with us the things that help us and we leave behind the things that don't. And all of our journeys are going to be different. We'll all find different things of worth in different things.
Hmm. So, what do you enjoy about fantasy or dark fantasy or grimdark? I guess however you would describe it.
I've always found secondary worlds to be a really good place to play with complex ideas
Hmm.
that you just can't really do in reality. There's a lot of issues that writers face when they craft secondary worlds that you don't really come across in fiction. Like we already have established religions, we already do all that. But in a secondary world, you have to make it. And then you have to make the culture that surrounds it. And you have to find out what impacts it. And I just find that fascinating. And it gives you a certain liberty to play with situations and characters and ideas that you just don't find other places. I've always just really appealed to that. Let your imagination go and see what happens.
Hmm. So, when you're building this world, how do you keep track of how everything works and the history of the world that you're putting together? Do you have like note cards, or do you have a wall dedicated with strings and everything else that you have?
I I'm a pantser. I am the panzer's pantser. I don't know what I'm gonna write until I'm writing it. Like last night is a perfect example. I stopped editing and I ate dinner and I kind of felt this pressure in my brain and I told my husband I have something to write tonight and he said, "Do you know what it's going to be?" And I said, "I don't have a clue." And now I'm 5 chapters into a brand new book. So, I just never know. And I don't know where it's going to end. And I don't know what the story is about yet. And so I don't even know the characters. I just named one like 10 minutes ago. So
Oh, wow.
I just kind of fly through. I don't maps, note cards, nothing. I cannot know. If I know anything that's going to happen, my brain tells me I don't want to write it. This is boring. You already know it's going to go. So I just don't. So I'm blind.
Wow. So I'm sure you've probably started a lot of stories. Do you finish all the ones that you start when you have that urge to write?
Yeah. Yeah, I always do. Sometimes you'll see the books be published and sometimes you won't. But I always finish what I'm starting. There's a reason my brain basket needs to purge something. That's why it's there. So I let it go.
So when you start writing, did the characters take you along for the ride sometimes, or do you, as it comes out, do you kind of put them where you need them to be, or do they take on a life of their own sometimes?
They it's kind of a mix. I know usually there are certain themes I want to play with, and I don't really know how I'm going to do that. But as the characters introduce themselves to me, I kind of understand how this character is going to approach this situation, why they need to be in the book, what emotional strings they need to pull. Um, and sometimes I have to nudge them in the right direction. But then there are other times when a character just mostly they just reveal themselves to me. That's usually 90% of my character is organic, and the other 10% is me saying, okay, I know you need to make someone cry, so this is how I'm gonna do it. Um, but they just happen. There's it could be physical characteristics or emotional ones or something. In my book Glass Rhapsody, I didn't realize Elroy was going to have a drug problem until this is 2 chapters into it.
Hmm.
And I didn't know today that one of the characters I just started writing didn't have a hand until I was done writing that he didn't have a hand. So it just happens. So it's a mix. I'm chaos.
I guess it's so interesting to me how everyone has a different kind of creative process, and how it becomes to how it kind of comes out. It's really interesting to me.
Yeah.
So when you sit down to writing, when you have that urge, do you have any strange traditions or just things you have to do, like a lucky charm or anything that you have to have just right for you to get into that space?
I have to have headphones on and music playing. That's about
Hmm.
it. Pajamas are better than not being in pajamas. And that's really my only thing.
Truer words have never been spoken.
Yes.
So when you are listening to music, do you have a certain genre of music you like to listen to that helps get the juices flowing?
Yeah, I listen to a lot of it's called cinematic symphony. So like Two Steps from Hell is a fantastic group. You can just search their music and then basically everything related to them is what
Hmm.
I listen to.
Oh, has that always been the case, or do you switch it up sometimes?
No, it's always been the case. I kind of added a lot of fiddle stuff when I was writing my Wild West series, but that just felt, I mean, there's sometimes when a fiddle works a lot better than an organ, and that was definitely a fiddle situation. So that was, yeah.
And another thing that I find really interesting is, the term grimdark. Everyone has a different opinion on what grimdark is or isn't, and it. I've been trying to find out what does it mean, and it seems like everyone has a different definition. What is your definition? What does that term mean to you?
I don't know. I don't I don't know. It seems to be something people are arguing about right now, and I will say most of the books I edit would probably be classified as grimdark by someone.
Hmm.
And the commonality I see through a lot of them are characters that aren't afraid to operate on the darker spectrum of the human experience. And that's not even true for grimdark all the way because dark fantasy does it, horror does it, fantasy does it. So I don't know. Grimdark, though, a lot of the authors they have battles and there's blood and it's unapologetic and it's just darker. I think there's a lot of darker emotions. Nihilism sometimes seems to be a thread through a lot of them. I don't know, but then again, I can honestly say that about literally everything else. So it's in the eye of the beholder.
Hmm. And speaking of Grimdark, you are an editor at Grimdark magazine, right?
Yes.
What is that like? What is that? How has that been?
Well, I just got the position, I think it was November. It's been crazy because we had the anthology edits they were like halfway done. And so I had to take over halfway through it and then hurry and try and finish it. And I still have like 2 more stories to do. And then there's a magazine and we had to kind of stop time and do that too. And but it's been awesome. So the first few months were kind of hectic and I think I'm coming out of that. I think we're caught up and but you know, I pulled through and they did the thing and that was awesome. I never imagined I would ever be able to say something like I proofread something for Cameron freaking Hurley, or you know, I edited a story for. I mean, I don't even know. It was just incredible, and it was surreal. And there, we have some projects coming up that I can't talk about,
Yeah.
but they're also going to be amazing, and I'm very excited for people to learn about them. Um, but it's been really cool. It's opened doors I never anticipated. It's
Hmm.
got me to work with people I've always looked at from a distance, but never really thought I could work with on a professional level.
Hmm.
It's really been one of the coolest things that's happened to me.
Wow. And what is that? What is that like when you read something you really enjoy but you can't talk about it? How frustrating is that? Because you want to tell everyone that how great it
Yeah,
is.
I hate it. It's the worst thing. It is the worst thing. And I was sworn to 1000% secrecy. So I can't say anything except for I'm sworn to secrecy. And it just pisses me off. It's like this incandescent rage. But then I also know the big revelation is going to be amazing whenever it happens. But I'm not good at patience and I don't do secrets well. So it's been I mean, I'll hold them, but I don't want to. And so it's difficult.
Yeah, that would drive me crazy. That'd be really tough. That'd be the worst part, probably, is keeping that secret.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have any favorite or least favorite fantasy tropes?
Hmm. Um, you know, I used to be able to say yes, and I'd have a list, and I'd be able to tell you why. But the more I edit, the more I realized absolutely anything can work if it's worked well. And there's like no trope that I think just doesn't work. It can usually there's a reason, and if an author is skilled enough, they can make it work. The reason a trope becomes a trope is because it works. You know, it wouldn't be a trope if it wasn't something that worked. It wouldn't exist. So it's not a matter of whether they're good or they're bad. It's a matter of this is a tool, and it depends on how the author uses it.
Hmm.
In my mind.
Oh,
But there are some things that do bother me, like portrayal of disabilities is really a bugaboo for me because I'm disabled and it bothers me when it's done wrong. Um, Inequality issues, class, gender, race, sexuality, stuff like that can be very tricky, and there are tropes in them that can be extremely damaging. So
mm,
I am always on the lookout for something like ableist language or something that could be perceived as offensive to a certain group of people or some because it slips in and nobody means for it to, but sometimes our language just does things and it takes and you just have to be aware of it. And I'm not perfect. I learn as I go. But
mhm.
that yeah.
It's a process for sure. And if you're editing a book for somebody and they unintentionally made one of those mistakes, how do you present that to them? Is that can that be a difficult conversation to have?
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes it can be, but usually the author is really receptive to it. Most authors don't go into a book thinking I want to offend people. They want
Right.
people to read their book. And the way you get people to read your book is by not isolating half of them and, you know, offending them and stuff. So most authors want to be told. if there's something like ableist language in their book. And I try, when I run into something like that, I try really hard not to just say this is ableist, but you need to know why it's ableist. Why, like, turning a deaf ear is a phrase we shouldn't say, or turning a blind eye is a phrase we shouldn't say. It doesn't help to say, oh, tisk tisk, don't do this. You have to know why you shouldn't do it. And if there's a question, I usually will ask someone who I know has experience with that specific thing and can help me. But most authors really appreciate knowing. They don't want to offend people. They want to attract readers. So it can be hard, kind of uncomfortable, but usually both parties are glad it had happened.
That's good. Then it sounds like it turns into a positive, negative to a positive.
Yeah.
And when did you start editing?
About 6 years ago.
Hmm.
I've been at it for a while.
Wow. So what made you try to start doing that regularly?
I fell into this career. I started my website, Bookworm Blues, in 2010. It was just a place for me to go to talk about books because nobody in my life cares. Nobody. And so I started this website. I thought this is a place where I can be excited and I can pretend someone out there gives a shit. So I started it and I spent years doing it. And one day out of the blue, I had an author contact me and say, so how much do you charge for editing? And I said, I'm not an editor. And he said, well, that's really stupid. Here's my book. How much do you charge? And I looked at it and I said, I'm not an editor. He said, okay, we'll work something out. Why don't you see what you can do on this? And so I did it because he was a friend of mine and it seemed like an interesting challenge. And I told him, if I can't do this, then, don't be offended. And so we went through it and he loved it. And then he told about me to like his friends. And from that, the ball just snowballed and it went downhill, it got bigger and bigger. I didn't mean to do it. I was part time until 2020 and now I've gone full time.
Wow. That's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fun that you kind of stumbled into it like that. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, there's always discussions online. There was one like a week ago between a bunch of editors, like how did you get into the career field and what did you do to prepare yourself and all this stuff. And I just can't ever even have those discussions with people because literally nobody's like, I tripped and fell into editing and now I'm full time and I'm just like doing it. And it just isn't something that happens. So I see these conversations. I always get pinged in them, and I always end up saying, I don't know. I don't know. Have fun. I don't know.
So if somebody asks you to edit their book, how long does that process take for, let's say, a 400-page book?
I always ask for a month,
Hmm.
so I can usually get it done in a month. Some of the longer ones, like I just did one for Ryan. I hope I'm saying his name right. Ryan Cahill.
Mhm.
And he's gonna kill me if I said his name wrong. But I just did his book and it was really long and he had a deadline and stuff. So sometimes I'll break it up and I sent it to him in chunks. And so we were kind of working on it at the same time and it took a little longer than a month because it was long. But so I can do that too. But most books I tell people a month. And if something happens, like my life just becomes haunted all of a sudden, then then I'll tell them I might need an extra week on this one. My refrigerator broke and my kitchen flooded and my kid broke her thumb and so sometimes things happen. But usually a month is a good ballpark.
Oh, so I was under the impression that the author would write the book and then hand you the completed book. You actually work on it as they are sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Usually they don't want it like that. Usually they send me the book and they don't want to look at it until I'm done. But sometimes, like with Ryan, he had a deadline. So I was like, why don't I just send it to you as I do it? And then we kind of went through it at the same time together. And it was kind of fun because we were both at roughly the same point in the story. And so there were a lot of moments where we could have like real time back and forth over Twitter chat or something and he could snowball it. He could throw ideas at me, and I would kind of help him figure out how to work a scene. That was a lot of fun, but it rarely happens like that. There's like Mike Fletcher. The first time I edited for him, I said, "Do you want me to send it to you as I edit or in one go?" And he goes, "If you send it to me as you edit, I am going to kill you." And so that was that. He doesn't do that. So every author is different.
I've read Michael Fletcher's books. You do not want to upset Michael Fletcher.
Yeah, and the thing is, he's gonna kill me too. He is like all tough and hardcore and stuff. He's the nicest guy on the face of the planet. He is he is the nicest person. I'm so glad I work with him. He's just one of the best people in the genre, I think. As his books are amazing, and just as a human being, he is amazing.
Yeah, I've had a couple of chats with him, and he's always been super polite and just really easygoing and fun
Yeah.
to talk to. And it's funny because the people who write the darkest books are the nicest people. It's so interesting.
Yeah, we got some stuff to work out, and we do it through writing.
Thankfully, you found the outlet because who knows
Yeah,
what would happen.
yeah.
So if an aspiring author or an author who hasn't gotten to the point where they need an editor yet, and they came to you and said, "What are common mistakes I can avoid?" What would you tell them?
Like with writing or with finding an editor?
Writing.
Writing. Okay, so your book does need to be edited. Like I know beta readers exist and they're great, and so are critique groups, but it's not an edit. So there's this theory that you can just, a good beta reader will find it, and they might, but an editor knows how to, and that's kind of our job. So you need one, and that's that's the primary thing. I also think for stylistic reasons, there's the show don't tell thing you see a lot. And I think there are times when you need to tell, and that's fine. And there are times when you need to show, and that's fine too. And you just have to know which time is which. There are moments in the books I edit where I'm fine with the author telling me what I need to know for the scene. And then there are moments where I'll leave a note that says, "This is great, but is there a way you can show us this? Bring us into the scene because it'll have more impact that way." Similarly, I also think a handful of adverbs are okay. That's the other thing. If you sprinkle a few ly words in your novel, I'm okay with that as long as you use them to maximum effect, and they're not all the time. But that's something that a lot of them do not do. So that's probably my biggest ones.
So if they asked you about finding the right editor, what would you tell them with that question?
You need to ask people whose books you like, who they use to edit. And then you need to go to those editors and you need to ask them for a sample edit. And some of them will do it for free, and some of them will make you charge 20, $30 for a sample, and that's fine. You'd rather pay $30 for a sample and to know this person does not work the way you need them to, than to pay $900 on a manuscript edit and hate every single second of it. So you need to know, you need to make sure, get referrals from people in the community, people you trust, and then you need to approach those editors and you need to get samples. Oh my God, get samples. Because the amount of people I have seen who have contacted me, I had one guy a few years ago contact me and say, "I had this guy edit my book. He had it for 6 months. He sent it back. I paid him $1,200 and he left 3 comments in the whole thing. And they
Wow.
signed a contract and there's nothing he could do about it."
Oh no, that's terrible.
Yeah, so get the test drive. It is an investment. You have to know it's the right person for you and for your book. And not every editor is going to be right for every project. I have some people hire me for all of their books, and I have some people hire me for the more emotional ones because they know that's kind of what I do. And some who just, it just depends. But you need to be very cognizant of who you're working with and what you want from them, and whether you'll want them for this book or this book and all your others. And and stuff
Mm.
like that.
Oh, wow. So what's involved with a sample edit? Is that a few pages that they kind of take and then return back to you?
Yeah, and then again, they all do it kind of differently. I have a friend who charges $35 and he'll have them send the first 100 pages and he'll just edit, some of it, and then he'll read through the rest. And for me, I don't have time for that. I just don't. Like I have an assistant and she kind of filters through my email now. I just don't have time. So for me, it's 5 pages. And they send me the first 5 pages, or I had someone send me 5 pages from chapter 3 last week. So you just send me 5 pages and I edit them the way I would if it was a job I was signed up for. And then I send them back and I tell you, we'll talk business if you like what I do. And if you don't, I can send you to some other editors I know that I trust. And then I just wait, see what happens. But that's usually for me, I have learned the best way for me to go about it is to not even talk business with the authors until I do the sample. I need to see how you take criticism,
Mm.
and you need to see how I operate. And so that is a test drive for both parties. I have had authors get a sample edit back and then just lose their shit. And
Really?
so, yo,
Mm.
the stories I could tell you. So some people just can't handle it, and that's fine. But I would rather know that before I have to work with you. And you would rather know if you can handle my edits before you pay for me to do that. So it just works better for both parties.
Without giving any names, of course, can you give us an example?
Yeah, so a few years ago, I had someone send me the first chunk of his book, and I edited it, and it needed work, and I told him that, and I sent it back to him. I said, "This isn't ready yet. I think it's an early draft. The bones of the story are good, but this problem and this problem, and it's just stylistic things like the core is there, the bones are here. You just
Mm.
kind of need to work on how you're displaying them a bit." So I gave him some tips and I gave him some websites and I said, you need a bigger critique, you need something else too. You need someone else to look at this and help you before it hits me. And he proceeded to send me over 60 private messages on Facebook arguing every single point I made, every single one for an entire weekend. And
Wow.
it was bad. And so I blocked him, and I'm very glad that I never worked with him. So that was one.
Wow. So not only is the kind of a test drive good for the author, it's also good for the editor too, so they can kind of
Mhm.
get a feel for each other for one another.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
And if a book isn't ready to be edited yet, it's only going to hurt the author more than help them. Like that's usually, I think, a lot of the time when authors get really discouraged about an edit, it's probably not because their book isn't worth it or they're a bad storyteller. It's probably just because you submitted it to an editor maybe a phase too early.
Hmm.
And it's never, and I tell people this a lot, it's never the story that's usually the problem. It's usually the surface details. It's usually just like uh just the way it just needs a little polish in the telling of it. Pay attention to dialogue tags. I see a lot of overuse or underuse of dialogue tags. Just simple things that I usually think, if you had just run through this one more time and maybe had one other person read it, you'd be fine. It's not a matter of you shouldn't tell the story. It's usually a matter of I think you're just hitting the editor at the wrong time for this
Hmm.
story. It needs a little more work. And that is no reflection on the author. Nobody's early drafts are any good. Nobody's. So it's not you, and you shouldn't quit writing, and your story's worth telling. Just, run through it again. That's it. No big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That must have been really tough to have a whole weekend full of messages, and that's difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun. It really made me mad.
Yeah, rightfully so. That's not right. And do you try to focus on a certain genre that you edit, or do you kind of jump back and forth between other genres?
I don't edit much science fiction, and it's not because I don't want to, but it seems to be because more my name is out there more for fantasy, and that's fine. Um, I don't mind. I've edited some, but not a ton. And then there's I, here's a story for you. Um, a few years ago, I had a young adult author, and she had a child, and then she had like severe postpartum depression, and she couldn't write, and she couldn't do anything. She was extremely depressed, and so she went to a therapist. She knew she was having issues, and the therapist said, "Well, why don't you just try writing something completely different?" And so she did, and like 6 months later, she contacts me and goes, "I have a book for you to edit. I really don't know if you're gonna want to, but you see, this is what my therapist said." And I said, "Okay, what, what the hell did you write?" And she goes, "Well, it's this really, really smutty male erotica." And so I said, "Fine, whatever." So I took it on because I really don't care. It just was totally unexpected. And and I took it on, and now apparently I edit a lot of male erotica. So that's how that happened. So yes, there you go.
Yeah. Hey, it's good to have have different types of genres, and have that experience just to
You
so you've
know,
done it and you're available.
it breaks up the fantasy, and hour. It's not my thing. I don't read it for fun, but I love when I get my erotica author books because it just breaks up the fantasy sometimes, and it's just like, oh, God, I don't need to think about the empire right now. That's
Yeah.
really nice. So it's become nice like that, but it's been fun. I've learned a lot of British sex slang, so
Oh, that's awesome. So, it's interesting because have you ever had the situation where like a British slang word, and you're editing and it sounds like the wrong word to use? Does that happen often?
mhm. Yeah, and it happens in fantasy too. There's a lot of little tiny differences between US and UK English that just like the other day there was one that I came across. They called a spatula a fish slice.
Hmm.
And I was like, what the hell is that? So I went on Facebook and I said, do you people actually call a spatula a fish slice, or is this author lying to me? And and we had this long debate about how it's actually a fish slice, but nobody calls it that anymore, and it's this huge thing. But I never would have known. I thought complete bullshit until I asked people. So sometimes stuff like that happens. There's some yeah, yeah.
Well, it's good to have a group that you can kind of bounce ideas off of and ask questions like that. Do you how helpful are those groups for you, not only as an editor but as an author?
It's really helpful. I'm trying to become a lot more cognizant of UK English because a lot more of my authors are coming from over there. And I need to know the spelling is a lot easier for me. You just add some extra U's, it's fine. But sometimes there's weird issues with like how the language is used. One of the ones I ran into that like nobody could agree on yesterday when I asked it was I've had a lot of English manuscripts, like British English manuscripts, come through me recently that they talk about someone being in the throne, like the queen is in the throne. And in my mind, it should be on the throne. The queen is on the throne. But I don't know because I don't have a queen. And so I figured I would ask people on Facebook because I do that. And I went to my wall and I said, okay, you people with queens, do you say she is in the throne, like she is subsumed and part of a fancy chair now? Or do you say she is on the throne? And it became this huge debate between it should be on, but that reflects it sitting on a toilet too, so it's very complicated. And so it's there's sometimes when it just happens. I figure you don't know unless you ask. And a lot of this stuff, like, it's just not on Google, or it brings up really weird porn when you search it. So I've learned that it's better to just ask, yo, British people, is it really a fish slice or is she nuts? So yeah, you just gotta ask.
Have to be careful with Google. You never know what you're
Yeah.
gonna end up with. Yeah,
Oh my god, yeah.
that's hilarious. Okay, so not only you're an author, you're an editor, you're also a blogger and reviewer. And I wondered, I've heard people recently talk about whether we should have star reviews or whether we should, give a numerical number to the review. Do you have any thoughts on that? On whether it should be more of a nuanced review, or should we have a set amount of like a rating for the book?
uh, I don't I don't know. I don't really have a big opinion on it. For me, I've always used review like ratings because that's what all the websites use. And so it's just easier for me to say, well, I give it 4 stars on Goodreads, and so I'm going to do that here. And in my mind, the reason why I started doing star reviews is because I figured if you don't want to read this huge page of text, you can just scroll to the end and see if I liked it. And that's why I started doing it. And now I keep doing it because I've been doing it since 2010, and I kind of feel like it'd be weird not to. But it's I might just stop because I made a deal with myself that I would only really review books on my website that I would rate 4 or 5 stars. I don't want to talk down. I want to promote. And because of that, all of the books I review are basically the same rating. And so I just don't know what the point is at that point. Like, you just assume it's 5 stars. It's on the website. I liked it. That's what you need to know. So, but as for other people, I think it just has to be a decision with what you're comfortable with. I don't know.
Yeah. So for you, what criteria has to be met for you personally to rate a book 5 stars that you would give the very top score to?
Well, I'm so unbelievably busy that basically a 5 star book is a book that captivated me enough to finish it despite all of this shit I need to be doing. So that's if I made it to the end, then it was amazing. So really that's really at this point in my evolution of a Sarah, that is my qualification. If it was good enough for me to read the whole thing, you need to read it.
That's a good criteria to have. So any book you go from start to finish is a 5 star.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have time for books that just don't floor me right now. I really, really don't. So that sounds like a low bar, but I mean, I am booked out for a year. I am double booked throughout June. I am so busy. It's not even funny. So if I found the time in my life where I don't even have time to sleep right now most of the time, then to finish an entire book, then it is a freaking book. I mean, it is really something. So that's yeah.
So what are some recent 5 star reads for you?
Oh man, I haven't been able to read for a while because I'm so busy. Let me see. I did a best of list. Let me pull it up because I can't remember. A lot of the books I read actually are nonfiction right now because I get so bogged down with fantasy that when I do my free time reading, I just need to read something that's not fantasy.
Yeah.
And so I've been reading a lot of nonfiction, and there's a few of those that were amazing. But I know Comfort Me with Apples, that Kat Valentine's the new one. Amazing. I read anything she writes, but that one it was the highlight of my year. It was so good.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And that's called Comfort Me with Apples.
Yeah, Comfort Me with Apples. She just released it. It's an interesting twist on mythology. Kind of like that kind of stuff. And she's just an incredible author. I mean, I would rate her books 5 stars just because she uses words so well.
Oh wow. And is it I always wonder, is it hard for you to turn off your editing, the editing part of your brain when you're reading your own, like just when you're reading for fun?
Yeah. Yeah, that's why when I usually am like editing as much as I am right now, that's why I usually only read nonfiction because I refuse to edit nonfiction. It's the one genre that I will not touch. And so it's the only place I can go anymore where I can read it and just not edit it because I don't. That's not what I do. Fantasy, I have to be these days. I have to be in the right mindset to read it because otherwise I will just think, oh my god, they should have line edited this. What the hell were they thinking? And the whole time, and and I don't want to do that. But I've also set rules for myself. The reviews on my website, I will never mention editing ever because I don't think that's fair for me to criticize how someone else. It's not my place. So I won't ever mention that in book reviews. But
Hmm.
the reverse of that is when I'm editing a lot and reading a lot of nonfiction, you're not going to have fantasy reviews because I'm just not reading it right now. So
Yeah. Is there a reason you won't edit nonfiction?
yeah, I love reading it. I love to learn and stuff. And I knew when I really started editing a lot, I knew I had to have something I could read that would remain untouched in my mind. And it had to be nonfiction. I really like to read a lot of science and history and World War II stuff, and I just didn't want to stop. I can't stop reading. So for me, it wasn't a matter of, you're just going to stop reading books in your free time. It's a matter of, no, I got to make a little spot for myself where I can read certain books and my brain just stops talking all the time. So it turned, that's why it's like my sacred little thing,
Hmm.
nonfiction.
Have you always been like a reader? Have you always enjoyed reading books?
Hmm. Yeah, I've always read. Yeah.
When did you start writing?
um, I don't remember a time I wasn't writing.
Hmm.
My mom commented the other day. She said, "I've never known you not to be writing a book." I mean, when I was in kindergarten, I wrote a story that was published and sent to the state fair. Like it was, it's always just been something in my life that I've always done. And it's become more serious as I've gotten older and kind of matured and stuff. But yeah, I've never not written.
Hmm. When did you decide to write a book and publish it? What was that experience like?
It was it's really scary. There's a certain vulnerability involved in publishing.
Hmm.
It's not your art anymore. It's everyone else's art at that point. And you have to reach a point where you are okay with giving that to people because no matter how much you tell yourself, well, it's just a book, some of you is in it. And so you're telling people, here's a little bit of my soul, and go ahead and read it and just shit all over it, and you have to be confident enough to do that. And it's scary and it's a seriously vulnerable thing. And so for me, I had to reach a point with my writing where I decided that allowing myself to be vulnerable was more worthwhile than letting it all sit and fester on my hard drive and inside me. And it was for me, it was more of a vulnerability thing. I had agent representation for a while that went really poorly, and so I kind of dabbled with it before I made the official decision. But I ended up going indie for a few reasons. I liked the control it allowed me to have because I felt very like I didn't have any control when I had an agent. And I will say, put an asterisk beside that and say this is not true for most agents. It was the one I had.
Hmm.
So it was bad. I wanted to keep the control, and I have disabilities. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I've had cancer. I've had a whole slew of things happen. And so I needed to be able to have a freedom to say, okay, so I have a serious health problem right now. I can't hit this deadline, and that needs to be okay without, alerting an entire publishing house. And so there were reasons like that why I went indie, but for me, it was a lot more about being willing to be vulnerable than not, I guess.
Yeah, that's I can't imagine what that must feel like to work on a book and have, like you said, part of your soul in it, and then to have it out for everyone to critique and either enjoy or not.
Yeah, it's hard. And that's something I think I can offer as an editor that a lot of other editors can't. Is that, well, I mean, a lot of them can, but a lot of them can't. But the fact that I've been on, all sides of this table as a reviewer and as an author and as an editor, I think it helps me approach every author and situation with a certain kind of humility, I guess. I don't know. I mean, you're coming to me so I can rip your book apart. And so you need to be able to you need to be able to trust that. But there's also things that I try to bring to the process that I know I want from my editor. And it's someone to tell me when a line is awesome. And someone needs to tell me when I'm not failing at this
Mhm.
one part. You've got to be able to boost someone as much as you constructively criticize them. Like an
Mhm.
editor should never leave you feeling like, why am I even bothering? They should leave you feeling like this needs work, but I can freaking do it.
Mhm.
And that's, the attitude that I try to bring to my editing, but I think that's because of my writing and all the others. I don't know. But anyway,
Hmm.
there you go.
we we did have a question from Brianna Cinder. She wanted to know how you do it all, and how do you find the hours to read and to write.
It's easier now. My kids are both in school, and so I have 6 hours while they are in school where I work undisturbed. And you can get a lot done in 6 hours. That's why as soon as they hit school, I upped how many books I'm taking because I can just plow through them now so much faster than when I was being disturbed every 10 minutes. And so that's helped. So I have 6 hours of undisturbed work time, 5 days a week, right there. And then after dinner, my kids come home, and from that point on, I'm done with work stuff. That is editing. Sarah goes away, and then I do school stuff and I cook dinner and all that crap. 7 o'clock at night is when I write my own books. So 7 o'clock to about 9. I give myself about a 2 hour window. And then at night, from 9 o'clock at night on, I read my Kindle. And that's generally how my day is broken up. It was before, it was 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there. You just fly through it and try to hold on. But now I have chunks. I have 6 hours for editing, then I have school stuff, family stuff, and then I have 2 hours for writing, and then I read.
So the after 9 o'clock in your Kindle, that's nonfiction usually, right? That's the stuff that you read just for fun.
Usually, yeah. Now it's nonfiction. I just finished Smiler's Fair, which was really good. There's another one I just finished. I haven't updated my list, but I was in a fantasy mood last week. I just needed to escape it all, which was nice.
Hmm.
So I kind of flip back and forth.
Have you ever edited a book that you enjoyed editing so much that it changed your perspective on editing in your own writing or on the genre itself?
Uh, yeah, I mean, there are some books that I edit that just, I mean, I think they're incredible, and I can't figure out why everybody's not reading them. Um, the one that was probably the most transformative for me recently was Dragon Mage by M.L. Spencer. I mean, she approached me and she said, "Look, it's like 1,000 pages long," and I thought, "Okay, I'll do this, but man, it's not going to suck. That is long." And like, and because it just gets to a point where you're like, man, if I have to look at a book for 1,000 pages, I'm just gonna go crazy. I'll have to walk away for a minute. But no, it flew by in a blink. I didn't even realize it was 1,000 pages. It was just total. I was so immersed in the entire world and story that I was completely lost in a way I've never been before when I've edited. And it was incredible. And I told her that. I thought this was gonna be horrible. It was 1,000 pages, and I thought, man, I'm gonna need like to take a break halfway through, and she's gonna hate that and all this. I was really nervous. And and I said, no, it was the fastest 1,000 pages I've ever. And then I was legitimately mad that I couldn't just go on to book two as soon as I was done. And I really want book two to be even longer because I just don't want them to end. They're so good. It's so good. So that was a really cool experience for me to be part of something that I loved that much.
Well, I'm buying Dragon Mage after this conversation.
It's so good. You're gonna love it.
I was, I always wonder in fantasy with maps, as an editor and as a reader and a reviewer, are maps important to you in fantasy books?
I don't usually look at them.
Yeah,
I
me
know
either.
I never, yeah, I never get them with the manuscripts I edit. Almost never. Sometimes an author will send me like, look at this artwork I got, and I'll look at them then. But I never get them with the manuscripts I edit, so I don't look at them at all then. And I think that's probably a good thing because I need to be able to know to picture where your character's going without having to look. And so that, in the end, I think is probably the best. But I don't really look when I read either. I do so much reading on my Kindle, and I just don't like flipping through pages. So I don't really look at them. I know they're important to people. I'm glad they are. I love looking at them when authors show them, but when I'm reading, I don't. I don't know.
Okay. I thought I was alone because I think they're cool and they're neat looking, but I'll look at it when I start, but I don't go back later and see where is this character I just read. So
No, usually if I end up having to look at a map to figure out where a character is, the author isn't effectively showing me in this story. I'm not being able to follow it. That's an issue with how you're telling it, not an issue with a map being present.
yeah. Okay, I'm not alone then. So
Yeah, no.
and what if an author is planning on self-publishing their book, what advice would you give them with what to expect with self-publishing?
Oh man. Self-publishing is great, but it's not the answer to all of life's ills. A lot of people say it's the end all be all. It is the fix of publishing. And the truth is, self-publishing has benefits and downsides, and traditional publishing likewise has benefits and downsides. They both have an equal number of pros and cons, and I made the right decision for me, but it's not going to be the right one for everybody. And so you have to do what's right for you. First of all, don't let anybody pressure you into one way or another. It's total crap. But more self-publishing, you're not going to be an instant success, and you're going to have to fight a lot harder with your reads than you would with traditional, typically. And that's fine. Like for me, my calculus is most of my focus professionally is on editing. And so for me, writing is the thing I do for fun. And so it allows me a lot more freedom to just say, like I released a novella a little while ago, and I don't expect anybody to read it. I don't really care. I mean, it's like it's fine. I wrote it for me more than anyone else. And then I thought, well, maybe someone else will find the story and like it. And so I put it up. But, you know, that's why self-publishing works for me, because I'm not in this for, I've already got my dream. This is
Mm.
just window dressing. But other people, they want this to be their career, and that's fine. But you're gonna have to work for it, and you have to establish an audience. And it's better not to get involved in the rat race. And if you go on Twitter all the time and scream "buy my book," nobody's gonna buy it, because everybody's screaming "buy my book" on Twitter. Everybody.
Yeah.
So you have to find a way to make people want to buy your book instead of just screaming at them. And that's hard. Marketing is really hard, and it can be soul sucking. And the soul
Mm.
sucking is why I don't do it. It just depresses me. Um, but it's a calculus that you have to make, and it's fine. It's fine if you go traditional, if you go indie, but you just have to know with indie you have to work for a lot of things, and it's going to take time, and you're going to have to build your audience, and you're going to have to give people a reason to want to follow you.
Mm.
And so what can you offer that nobody else can?
That's a tough one, right?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. It's impossible. And I realized, like, a few years ago, I realized marketing just really depresses me, and I had to think about my focus as an author, because I had a few of my authors saying, you just need to market your book. These are really sellable. You just have to find the people who want to buy, and that's going to require you to market your books. And so I said, okay, I'll give it a try. And I hated every second of it. I felt like I was just a washed up has-been, horrible. Why am I even bothered? It was awful.
Mm.
I realized that I don't want to feel like this. I'm not writing to feel like shit. That's not why I'm doing this. Like, my life is pretty awesome. Editing is my dream, and I'm living it. So
Mm.
why am I letting this make me feel like crap? And so I had to kind of switch my calculus around. How do I want to do this? How do I want to approach writing? And I decided, for me, I just can't market. Maybe someday I'll hire someone to do it for me, but I just can't. It's not something I can do. So I kind of just put my stuff out there and walk away, and let what happens, which is not how you should do it. Do not do that. It's not good advice. So it's different. It's different for everybody. And for me, I think I decided my mental health was more important than getting a bunch of randos to read my stuff. So, not good advice. Don't do it. It's not. I love randos, and I especially love it when randos review my stuff. But like, it just wasn't. That's why, like, the contest thing, I just submit stuff and walk. It's the same thing. I just can't. It depresses me too. I don't know when reviews drop. I don't know how my books are rated. I have no idea how much I get paid in royalty, because it goes to a different savings account, and I don't look at it. My husband doesn't. He doesn't tell me. And it's like this whole, I don't want to know. I just want to write it and walk away. And that's how I stay happy.
Mm.
So
We all have a system that works for us, so it's good you have your own
it's the
system.
worst system, and it doesn't work. So
So in looking at your bio, I was preparing questions for you, and I noticed that you mentioned a little bit earlier, but you're a 3-time cancer survivor.
Mhm.
And I wondered if you could offer advice for someone struggling with something similar, what advice would you give them?
Oh man, cancer was. I mean, it was awful. Um, I I don't even know. There's a lot of it I'm still dealing with. I have my remission checkup on the first, actually, so it kind of always wigs me out a few days before. Um, but mine came back 3 times, and it was just the worst. The last one really plowed me. Um, I don't have advice. There's no. You have to keep your support system around you. And for me, a lot of it was telling myself that it's okay to not be okay.
Mm.
So, because we have a lot of pressure put on us to be like, it sucks, but it's okay. It's fine. We always tell them, how are you? It's fine. Nobody is ever not okay.
Mhm.
And with cancer, you need to be not okay, and you need to have a safe space to not be okay. And for me, that was the thing. I had to have somewhere I could go and just cry. So yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot harder than it sounds to admit to yourself it's okay to not be okay. It's a really big step. So it's really tough.
Yeah, it's hard. And I think a lot of that comes out in my books because a lot of my characters have absolutely no grasp on their emotions. They don't handle anything well, and they don't do things in predictable ways. And they don't just get sad. They like tear their soul out and do it for a while. It's like, and they're always so over the top, and it's just so cathartic to write that. And I think the reason I do is because it's where all of that emotion just goes
Mhm.
straight out of me and into my. Every time I finish a book that just tears me apart, I feel like I lost 100 pounds. It
Hmm.
just all goes right into there.
Wow. So writing is therapeutic for you then.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I get this feeling like last night I started feeling I really need to make someone hurt. And so I got on my book and now I have 5 chapters of a book written. So it's always starts with pressure. And I think that was building up from everything that went wrong last week. And it just had to come out. And it always comes out in the book. Always.
Hmm. Oh wow. So on a lighter note, I noticed that, and also in your bio, that you're a tea fan. I was wondering what your favorite teas are.
I love peppermint.
Hmm.
Peppermint is my favorite. I've recently discovered if you mix peppermint and chamomile and lavender all together and let it steep for a few minutes, it will be the most amazing sleepy time tea you will ever drink in your life. It's just equal parts of peppermint, chamomile, and lavender, and you can thank me later. It's the best.
Okay, I'm gonna try that because I when I work nights and I used to drink chamomile and lavender together, but now I'm gonna have to add some peppermint and try it out.
Yeah, and that's just a really nice note. I like it.
Hmm. And are you a fan of loose leaf tea, or do you
I
do the bag?
am
Hmm.
now loose all the way.
Yeah, it's I used to do the bags, and once I went to of course you go to, before the craziness of the pandemic. We used to go to the tea store, and you'd have all the different jars, and it's such a fun experience to go through. And I can never imagine going back to bags. It's just so much fun.
It is. I love it.
Yeah, I have way too
Yeah.
many teas.
I do too. My husband has banned me from buying more. We don't have room for it.
Yeah. It doesn't look like much, but when you have 50 bags full of tea, it's a lot. So
Yeah.
it adds
Yep.
up. So I did have another question that was submitted by Book Reading Coffee Drinking. She has a YouTube channel. Her question was, has there ever been a hobby or something you've wanted to try, but when you tried it, you did not enjoy it?
Hmm. I don't know. Yeah, ice skating. I used to think ice skating would be cool, but ice skates really hurt my feet. And so I was like on the ice for about 30 seconds and I was like, no, this is not what I'm doing with my life. And that was the end of that. So that was my illustrious ice skating career. I could not ever. Um, golf is another one I do not understand. Like I tried that once and I was like, you do this all day and this is fun. Like we're having fun right now. I just want to know, should I be smiling? Is this something we do? So that was another one I didn't like it. And I tried knitting once too, and I just couldn't. Just like you've got to go. I really admire people who can knit, but it is not part of my life path. I can't. There's no way. It's, the yarn arts are not for me. So
Yeah. And I also read that you're a traveler. You like to travel. What are your favorite places to visit?
I like Ireland
Hmm.
a lot, and I love Germany. So those are my two that are great. I'm actually from the East Coast, and so I like going back to where I'm from a lot too. And that's nice. I would move back there in a heartbeat, but
Hmm.
here we are.
Oh wow.
So
It's it's interesting that, you can how different just people from different states are. So just the state right next to yours, maybe, like for me in New Mexico, people in Arizona and people in Texas are totally different, and people in college. It's strange the way
yeah,
that works out. It's just because it's just different mindsets and different cultures, and
yeah.
it's really
And
interesting.
Utah's a really weird place too. It's pretty, but we're kind of strange. So, but
I hope
hey,
to yeah, I hope to visit because the mountain biking there, of course, is some of the best in the country. So I hope to at least do some of that there some one of these days, maybe
oh
more.
yeah, it's great. You'd love it. It's great.
Yeah, we were thinking about relocating, but the pandemic and everything, so kind of
Yeah,
threw a
it's
wrench in the
hard.
works. Yeah. So I did have a couple more questions for you.
Okay.
Um, Last week I talked to Halo Scott, author Halo Scott, and we were discussing jelly beans and the different types of flavors from different jelly beans. And I like to pick the jelly beans out to get the individual flavors, and Halo is just like throws them all in her face and doesn't take that time. So when you eat jelly beans, do you take each individual flavor, or do you eat them all at once?
How to do each individual flavor. Otherwise, you just have a pile of sugar melting in your mouth, and you can't distinguish it. I mean, there's a gourmet, art to jelly beans, and you have to be able to appreciate each jelly bean.
Yeah. Okay. I'm in agreement with you. It's the flavors they get in these jelly beans is just out of this world. It's wild.
Yeah, yeah.
The next question I have for you is, if the zombie apocalypse happened today, what would be your weapon of choice?
So, my husband and I talk about this, and we kind of have a running joke. So I have cadaver parts all over my body. I have them in like my shoulder and up my spine, and in my hip. I've got cadaver everywhere. And then I also have electrodes up my spine.
Hmm.
So we talked about how I'm a cyborg and I have zombie parts. So we're figuring that with a robot or a zombie apocalypse, they'd probably be okay because they'd like sense that I'm one of them. So my thing is, if it happens, I will take over and I will
Hmm.
just become the overlord and you can all worship me. That's what's going to happen.
That is the best answer I've had yet. That's great. So the next question I have for you is, what was your first job?
I worked at the IRS.
Hmm.
Yeah,
That's an
there was
interesting
an
first job.
yeah, there was an IRS in town, and I worked as data entry. So
Hmm.
I would sit there on Saturdays and Sundays all day for like 10 hours, and I would listen to music on my Discman because that's what we
Nice.
had then, and
Yeah.
and I would just type in people's social security numbers for hours. That was my first job, and then when tax season was over, I went and worked at a grocery store.
Well, that's a big change.
Yeah, yeah, I liked the grocery store more.
The social aspect, or why did you like it more?
Yeah, the social. We weren't allowed to talk to each other at the IRS. It had to be completely quiet. And
Hmm.
for a 16-year-old, that was very hard and very boring. So for me, it was a level up.
So what lessons did you learn from that first job?
That the way you get through boring things is by listening to stuff. So that's really how I do it. And I took that lesson with me throughout my life. My last job that I quit to go full time, I was a bookkeeper for a huge store, and I'd have to get there at 4 or 5 in the morning and do all the money stuff and the accounting for the store. And I told them flat out, I said, I will take this job, but I will never not be listening to an audiobook. And if that is a problem for you, then I will not take the job because that is I will take it and I will listen to stuff. That is it. And they said, well, you can't do that. And I said, then I'm not taking it. And then they offered me the job. So that was how that happened. And then they would do these stupid like chant things. And they got me in trouble because they're like, "Hey, Sarah, you got to do this chant in the morning." And I said, "There's no way. There's not enough money in the world. I will never chant with you. I won't look at you chant. I won't be part of it. There's no way. We will not be chanting. And if that's a problem, I will be fired. I will walk out of here. It's fun, but I am not chanting." And so that was the other rule. That is how I do boring things. I don't chant and I listen to stuff.
Rules to live by, right?
Yes.
Yes.
God, I'm weird.
No, we all have our little rules that we have for ourselves.
Yeah.
So something I like to ask all the people that I talk to is, if roles were reversed, if you were in my position, is there a question that I should have asked you?
Oh God. I have no idea. I mean, I'm open to anything. I don't know. I'm not that interesting. I'm not.
Oh, I don't know about that.
But I don't know. I mean, whatever.
Well, if you think of anything, I like to try and add to my list and try to ask interesting questions. So I would like to see if there's any suggestions.
Every once in a while, I like asking people what their favorite traditional food is. Like, holiday and stuff. You can get some really cool recipes that way. That's I used to do these interviews on Fridays on my website, and someone suggested to put in a question for like your favorite family recipe. And man, I got so many good ones. I can't even. So that's one you can always add.
I am typing that in my list right now.
It's been fun, but I like cooking. So
what are some of your favorite family recipes?
my mother made a killer spinach dip, and she used to turn hamburgers into charcoal. So you never quite knew with her. Sometimes her pizzas were hit and miss, but she would make amazing cinnamon rolls at Christmas. And then I remember making fudge with her in the winter. Recently, I introduced my kids to my mother's rice pudding, and that, if you ask them, was the moment they discovered God. So it was. It was like the highlight of Christmas. I cooked it 4 times and I doubled the recipe, and my 10-year-old ate all of it. So that was probably the winner. That and the spinach dip.
Wow, that sounds delicious.
They really enjoyed it.
Sounds like it. I love rice pudding and things like that. It's bad.
So
bad news for me. Yeah. It's bad news. So I know you're really busy, and I know you have a lot to do. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come by and chat with me. It's been a really fun time.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad that we were able to work it out, and I'm really excited you accepted the invite. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I don't typically do stuff like this, but I really enjoy it. So.
Oh, awesome. Well, anytime you'd like to come back, I will make time for you. So just let me know when it works for you.
Sounds good.
And for anyone who wants to connect with you, to look into your to contact you about editing or reviewing or being an author, how would people connect with you?
Well, you can just search me online. My website is bookwormblues.net, and you can find all of my other links and stuff there. I'm on Twitter as Bookworm Blues, and I'm on Facebook. Just look up Sarah Chorn. I'm pretty sure there's only one of me, so you'll be able to find me pretty easily.
Cool. And I'll add all those links down in the description, whether it's on YouTube or on the audio podcast. So
awesome.
Yeah. So thanks again. It's been I guess it's just been a great time. So had a blast. But yeah, let's do it again soon.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks again.
Yeah. Bye.